YouTube world? My name is Nicholas Montez, and welcome back to my YouTube channel, everybody. I'm so excited to have y'all back here again, and guys, we made it, guys. Today, by the time you're watching this video, it is June 2nd, 7 o'clock p.m., and by the time you see this video, I'm probably, most likely, currently walking the stage as I graduate high school. But, while I'm doing that right now in that moment, we gotta celebrate some of the best movies of the last 4 years. So, today, it is sort of the conclusion of this ranking list because the next two videos in this series will be tier lists, live streams. So today, I'm giving you my top 10 favorite high school movies. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so coming from number 10 is a film that actually just came out recently, and that is the movie Obsession. Now, I really didn't know what was going on about this film because as I was trying to pick my number 10 spot, I really had a hard time because I was picking between, do I want to pick the recent Marvel movies that came out last year, or do I pick a bunch of horror movies that I've liked as of late? And I think I'm going to go with the horror route because that's been something that's been on my mind as of late. And Obsession, in my opinion, is the best movie of 2026 as of right now, as it basically deals with a story that, in my mind, I feel like a lot of us can relate to because we're always wanting the girls or the boys to, be obsessed with us, to love us unconditionally. But exactly how far can that go? Of course, we don't want it in the way Nikki did it in the film. And I personally just thought the experience of this movie was just so good. And this is a perfect example because this is a movie that, I think the entire movie works, but the best thing about it is that performance of the girl that plays Nikki. She steals the movie instantly. But also, I like the score in it. I like some of the soundtrack in it. I like the way certain shots and the way it kind of shows, such sudden doom. Everything about it is so fascinating. And even just hearing about all the little theories that happen within the movie, all of it just sounds absolutely awesome. So, I absolutely loved this movie. At number 9 is going to be Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. So, of course, I remember when this movie was first announced, honestly, I didn't really know what this was going to come up of it because, I grew up with the first Puss in Boots. I was a big fan of that film, and Puss in Boots is one of my favorite characters from the Shrek franchise. So when they immediately announced that they're making, a Shrek, Puss in Boots sequel, I was like, that's cool, but how are people going to get excited for that? And then I saw the trailer, and I'm like, why does the animation look so weird? And then I realized it's kind of doing that Spider-Verse thing, where the animation is going to look unique, and we're going to have unique characters, and we're going to do all this. We're going to bring in the Big Bad Wolf, and Jack Horner, and Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Bring back Kitty Softpaws. And the way that this movie works so well, of course, it still stayed true with Antonio Banderas as Puss in Boots. It still brought back Kitty Softpaws and made sense for her to come back. And while you don't have characters like Jack and Jill coming back, the new characters that have come in the story, they feel unique as this is a fairy tale world. And we like to see all the different fairy tale characters in the world of Shrek. Now, the Three Bears plotline, I still don't understand as to how they're here, because weren't they rugs in Shrek? Also, the Big Bad Wolf, he's pretty threatening, but, I wish he had a better plot than just being the death of Puss in Boots. But, the animation, the action, all the characters, the little dog character, the comedy, everything about this movie is honestly perfect, and I honestly just absolutely love it and had a blast with it. Alright, so coming to number 8, I have Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1. Or I guess just Dead Reckoning because Part 2 is already out and it's a different thing. So I remember in summer of 2023, as I was ending out my freshman year of high school, I was getting ready for this film as I was watching all the other Mission Impossible movies for the first time. And I didn't really know what this film was going to be like. The first two films are very standard movies. They're nothing special. But as you get into the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth ones, they are true special experiences, and you understand why this franchise is really beloved. And so going into the fourth film, I was thinking, oh, maybe this is going to be something really special. and it absolutely was. On the plus side, Tom Cruise understands how to do classic cinema, where he knows how to do action that is practical. And while it doesn't have as much of the hand-to-hand punchy fights in Mission Impossible Fallout, this one brings all the great stunts in this movie that I think are excellent, whether it's the car stunt or the train stunt or really just even like the little chases we have throughout the whole movie. It's just really invigorating, but also I like the addition of characters, whether it's Haley Atwell's character, Palm Clement Tief's character. Everything about it just felt so unique, as well as the score, the tension, the way the story kind of goes back to the first Mission Impossible. So it kind of made you interested and maybe want to rewatch the franchise a little bit. Overall, the movie just worked so well. And I'm so disappointed that the second part of this story didn't work as well. And this movie, was able to still have fun and be entertaining while doing all the serious, thrilling stuff. So, this was a masterclass in how to do action spy cinema. At number 7, I have Civil War. So, this was a film I was not sure if I wanted to go watch in theaters. I wanted to go see this with my mom, and basically, it was kind of, ironic because this technically came out during an election year. But if I'm going to be honest, I honestly loved the way that this movie went. Because honestly, I was just going in wanting to see what the Civil War storyline is in the present day with military weapons and all that stuff. And on the plus side of that, they do give that. As an A24 film, as this type of story, it gives you that. But it's not your typical war movie where you have to follow a specific soldier's character and everyone else is wrong. And it's not really about who's right, what's wrong. It's more about showing us the perspective of the reporters and how they perceive of war and the pictures and the things they have to see in order to make reports of everything. And it's a really interesting job. And what's also crazy is they found a new way to create a different kind of war movie where the reporters, even though they have to take this stuff, how far do they have to go to get these reports to where they'll be just gunned down? Because that scene with Jesse Plemons was crazy. And it even finds a way of presenting images that are terrifying but beautiful at the same time. And it's so powerful that a movie can actually do that. So I just rewatched it yesterday and I was like, yeah, this movie, it's extremely powerful. Absolutely loved it. Movie number 6, I have Jim Henson, Idea Man. So this was the Jim Henson documentary that came out on Disney+. And I'm going to be honest, I didn't really know much of Jim Henson besides him being in Sesame Street and The Muppets. Of course, I knew him because of that, because those are the shows and movies I grew up with. But what I didn't know is what this documentary informed me of is that he wanted to be a filmmaker. He wanted to do short films and that he did that stuff. He was so invested in television. He was invested in having so many ideas for Broadway shows, theme parks. While he was invested in puppeteering, he was also invested in other things. And so to discover this man, but also discover the relationships he had with people, like Frank Oz and the cast of The Muppets, the cast of Sesame Street, and all of that stuff just was so moving that by the time you get to the ending of this documentary, where they do the whole memorial thing, they talk about his death, they talk about everything, you feel sad, as it's supposed to, because it is a sad thing as people die, but at the same time, you also feel you feel accepted because you were glad that he was born and you were glad that he was here on this planet to give us these iconic pieces of work. And that is probably the greatest achievement that Jim Henson has ever brought to entertainment, to Jim Henson Company. Everything about it just absolutely great. And honestly, I rewatched it just last week and I absolutely loved it. This is a top-tier documentary on Disney+. Bringing us into the top 5, I have Flamin' Hot. So if you don't know what this movie's about, it is essentially the biopic about the guy who invented the hot Cheeto chips. And by that standards, you kind of just realize, well, what's this going to be about? But what makes it a lot more interesting for me is that this is one of the few films that I actually would recommend to people whenever, like, they just don't have anything to watch. Because this movie is both informative and it's both entertaining. On the informative side, it actually shows you the history of how the hot Cheeto chips kind of came about, where you have I don't remember the guy's name, I'm sorry, and I watched the movie like 3 times, where you have the guy that invented them, he tries to work at Frito-Lay, and, you know, all these other chips are going down, and as he's thriving as a janitor, Frito-Lay and all these other chip stores, they're struggling throughout the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. And so the chip stores, the chip companies need a new chip to sell in order to afford money, to get people their jobs back. And that's where the guy comes up with the hot Cheetos. And it becomes a big hit, and they try selling it. And that whole history was so compelling in the way they filmed it. But on the plus side, it's also a story with this Hispanic guy who kind of the stuff with all the hot Cheeto stuff goes back to his childhood, where he was selling burritos at school. He has a wife since childhood, and, you know, they're still together and having kids and stuff, and life is difficult, and, you know, having to steal as he got older, and, like, just the whole story of becoming this great person, and then becoming a janitor, then rising up to being this big person that created the hot Cheeto chips. Like, all of this stuff is so creative, and it makes you care about this character really, and these characters really well. But at the same time, it never loses its heart. It has great humor. It's got a pretty good soundtrack too. And it's also, like, got cool satire, which fits into the comedy as well. So I overall just loved Flamin' Hot, and I definitely recommend you to all film fans. If you like hot Cheetos, if you like biopics, this movie's for you. At number 4 is going to be Inside Out 2. If you can tell by one of the films that I had previously loved in the last 4 years, you could probably tell that I actually changed my mind on it and put my favorite film of 2024 below and put the second one on number 1. But overall, I think Inside Out 2 was just the return to Pixar that I truly needed. That, you know, and especially coming out after sophomore year, where I just thought it was just one of the worst years of high school. I thought this was not only a great movie for Pixar, but it just kind of showed the transition of what middle school to high school is like, where you realize you're not going to be with your friends forever, and you're going to be going your separate ways. But at the same time, while it continues the fun of the first movie, you see the emotion characters grow and change, where you get to see Anger put out his rage, but he's still a pretty good guy, and he's becoming a better guy in some ways. Sadness, she's sad when she needs to be. Joy is still joyous as ever. Disgust and fear or whatever. And then, of course, when you get her new emotions, they're plenty of fun. But at the same time, I like that it's still centered around one simple emotion, and that's anxiety, which is something that we all deal with as we get older. And, you know, throughout that year, when I was like growing and stuff, like, I was going through a lot of anxiety. So this movie related a lot to me as that, like, process has happened. And the movie just means so much when you finally go through something like that and understand anxiety attacks. It's really powerful stuff. And this just felt like good old Pixar. This felt like the Toy Story 2 of the Inside Out franchise. This was peak Pixar. At number three is going to be The Wild Robot. So this was another DreamWorks movie that came out in 2024. Like I said, I actually decided to put this film as my favorite 2024 film. I haven't really decided. They kind of go back and forth. I remember when this film first came out in theaters. I went to go see it with a friend. And I, of course, was excited for it because it's DreamWorks and the trailer looked cool. Had a cool animation style. But I didn't expect going into it that it was going to be this good. That I was actually going to be going back and rewatching it. And somehow, even last year, I managed to get obsessed with it. And somehow this film has become a new obsession of mine to where I just love the Wild Robot. And I think what makes it work, because I was like predicting myself what the movie was going to be. And I guess I wasn't watching the trailers fully, but I was predicting of how the movie was going to go. I predicted that the robot's going to meet some animals, and she's going to adopt this gosling, and she's going to raise it. We're probably not going to see him grow up to swim or fly, but it'll just be like a long hour short film. And then we can start, and so we get to see him eat, and then we get to see him progress into a little bit of a gosling, where he gets to learn how to swim, and then it proceeds to do this storytelling of teaching him how to fly. And by the time he goes flying south for the winter, I thought, that's the end of the movie. Like, winter's coming, that's the end of the movie. But it doesn't end like that. Then they do the storyline where the robot saves all the animals, where Roz goes out into the winter wilderness and saves all the animals. And then I thought that's how the movie was going to end. But then it transitions to springtime, and the birds, the goslings have returned from winter, and Roz tries to find Bright Bill. The robots from Roz's company come and try to bring Roz back, and then the robots come, attack the forest, but the entire forest, the entire island comes together, and when you put all that together, I'm just like, that is how you do powerful cinema. That is a movie right there. And I'm like, this movie is epic. It's awesome. And of course, the voice performances are great. The animation is awesome. The whole voice cast from Mark Hamill, Pedro Pascal, Lupita Nyong'o, everyone in this movie is so perfect. This movie is so perfect on so many levels. At number 2 is going to be a film that I recently just saw this year, not in the year of 2026 that it came out, but film that I saw in the year of 2026, and that is Intergalactic. Me personally, I wanted to watch this movie for a long time. Didn't really know what it was about. All I knew is that it had the sort of same animation style like Spider-Verse, and I heard it was a love story, and it stars black people. Didn't really know what it was about until Valentine's Day weekend, my friend recommended it to me, which of course I wanted to watch it. And I was working late one night, and I was like, you know what? And this was like during the Valentine's Day weekend. I was like, you know what? I'm going to save all this stuff for tomorrow, and I'm just going to turn in for the night, and I'm going to go ahead and watch Intergalactic, because I think it's probably needed. If this movie's good, maybe I'll watch it. So I decided to watch it, and for the next 1 hour and 34 minutes, I immediately fell in love with this movie. This movie made me want to fall in love. On the plus side, this movie kind of relates a lot to me in some ways, because now obviously, unlike Jabari, I am not a black man. I am not, obviously as I'm recording this video, I'm not graduated from high school yet, though by the time you're watching this video, I'll have been graduated. But there's a key thing that I tend to deal with as a kid. I tend to deal with hormones, sexual thoughts and everything. I'm not going to go deeper into that, but, And when you are introduced to Jabari's ex in the film with Carmen, and you get those shots of her body, and you get all that stuff, my brain starts to understand why she's called the ex. Because she's good for the body. As her personality, she's kind of toxic. So it makes sense. But then you bring on over to Meadow, and well, she's got a good body, and she's pretty. She also has personality, and she has style at the same time. She has something going for it. And not to say that Carmen doesn't have that too, but she just kind of gives the ick in many ways. And what's so crazy is when you get the scene when after Jabari and Carmen hook up, you feel like, oh, they just hooked up. But you don't feel as glad about it. You feel like it's like it was a mistake, as Jabari felt in that moment. With Meadow, it doesn't really feel like a mistake. In many ways, all that sexual stuff, instead of feeling like it's disgusting, it's like weird, it felt like it was like a piece of art And that's what really brought this film to life. Not to say that I was focusing on that the whole time, but like the way it presented that was something truly beautiful. Even though it was like for a short like moment with the song "I'm Willing to Trust," and even then, I also love that it's kind of like this living album, like just spiraling, and I absolutely love that about the movie. I love the animation. The animation style is top notch. Absolutely fell in love with it. So overall, I think Intergalactic is truly one of the best movies that I've seen in the last 4 years, and I think it still counts because it came out in September of 2022, and I was in high school in September of 2022, so it counts. So yeah, Intergalactic #2, and finally, my favorite high school movie of all time that I have talked about constantly, that I have plenty of people to watch, that I have honestly, it has shaped my experience of movies the last 4 years that I have never gotten over of, is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Y'all, this movie hit me on so many emotional levels that I just can't believe this movie worked. Now, in many terms, I never expected that in my last 4 years of high school that a Guardians of the Galaxy sequel would make it my top 10, or even my number one choice of my favorite film of the last 4 years. But here's the reason why this movie connected with me so much. First off, in many ways, it was kind of that first great big Marvel movie that came out. Of course, I love Wakanda Forever. I love No Way Home. But of all the Marvel movies that came out those last 4 years, this one just hit a different level, where everything about it just felt personal, to where No Way Home was all about that multiverse shit, but Wakanda Forever was mourning the death of an actor. And in this, it was taking that story that we've been developing since Guardians of the Galaxy 1, since 2014, since 9 years before that, and you come to this story, and we're learning about the story of Rocket, and we're having our Guardians go across the galaxy to save him. And at the same time, while we're learning about Rocket, we also get great moments with our Guardians, so it never leaves them out or, excludes them from the movie. They get great moments too. And even some of the side characters get great moments as well, with Kraglin and Cosmo. And at the same time, as a superhero film, the visual effects are great. The set pieces and the action is great. Probably the best action in a Guardians of the Galaxy film. High Evolutionary is the best Guardians villain, even though he's probably not one of the best MCU villains. He's good for this movie, as he's so, trying to be intelligent and all that. And at the same time, just learning about the story of Rocket and everything just moved me so emotionally that I'm like, I just can't believe that they went for it. And, it makes sense because this was James Gunn's last time at Marvel. So, and they already fired him before. What, they're going to fire him again just for, dropping the first F-bomb in the MCU? No. He doesn't give a fuck. He doesn't give a fuck. So, overall, I think this movie was absolutely perfect. Great soundtrack, great character arcs, just everything about it. It is one of the most perfect films in the last 4 years. Honestly, if you haven't seen Guardians 3 yet, I highly recommend you go watch it, because it is a blast to watch. Well, that is it for my top 10 high school videos list. How about you? If you're a high schooler, if you're just graduating this year, tell me down below, what were your favorite movies of the last 4 years of high school? What movies inspired you? What movies did you watch differently? And what movies are you excited for your college years, or if you're even going to college? Let me know down below in the comment section, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace!